This is LiveWell Talk on St. Luke's Heart and Vascular Expansion, Phase 3. I'm Dr. Dustin Arnold, Chief Medical Officer at Union Point Health, St. Luke's Hospital. Returning to the podcast today is Justin McDonald, Director of St. Luke's Heart and Vascular Services, to discuss the progress of St. Luke's $25 million Heart and Vascular expansion and the final phase that is underway. Justin, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Well, what were phases 1 and 2, and then tell us about phase 3.
Yeah, so all the phases are really focused on advancing our procedural capabilities and capacity. So the first phase was focused on electrophysiology and expanding those, our lab capacity there. That actually opened, it was early fall, late summer last year, so that's up and operational. For our listeners, EP really, deals with irregular heart, rhythms. The second phase was focused on vascular and interventional radiology, and so that opened actually this last winter. So 2 of the 3 phases are complete, and so very much needed for our community. And then the third phase, kind of that we're in the middle of now, is really focused on the hybrid operating room, where we do procedures like TAVR, which I'm sure we've talked about on the podcast, or TCARs, transcarotid artery revascularization, mitral valve repair through MitraClip, things of that nature. So,
and for the listeners, what is a hybrid operating room?
So many of the procedures that are performed within cardiovascular are guided by medical imaging. So they're catheter-based interventions, but they're using, imaging to help guide that procedure. As cardiovascular care has sort of advanced and advanced over the years, we're able to do more and more procedures that kind of require the elements of a traditional operating room. And so like those procedures that I just mentioned. So the hybrid operating room is really combining sort of the elements of what you traditionally see in like a cath lab with an operating room environment. And so, there's a big part of it really is space. So, there's lots of personnel in these procedures.
Yeah,
so you might have, a cath lab,
right,
and the OR team.
A lot of imaging machines.
Tons of equipment. I mean, interventional cardiologist, general cardiologist doing imaging, cardiothoracic surgery, echocardiographers, and then all the equipment.
Well, it's kind of a good example that cardiology is a team sport.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Multidisciplinary team.
Physicians and team members and everyone involved, really across a lot of areas of the hospital. So
now phase 3 is the final phase.
Yes.
Phase 4 is an expansion of my office.
Yeah, I'm working on the business plan right now.
Put that together, would you? How's the community and the listeners going to benefit by this expansion?
Sure. Primarily, again, as we continue to evolve our capabilities, we need to be able to provide sufficient capacity, quite honestly. With the rapid growth of cardiovascular, particularly in some of the more, certain select areas, we didn't have the capacity that we needed. It has grown so rapidly that it was hard to keep pace. So, electrophysiology is a good example of that. I mean,
a lot of toys coming out.
Yeah, and we were, it took months, to be honest, to get in for a procedure, ablation in particular. But now it's weeks to get in, and so, St. Luke's being one of the more advanced cardiovascular centers in the state, certainly in eastern Iowa, we need to continue to evolve and grow. And part of that was simply having enough capacity in order to do that. So
now, when will the project be bow on it, ready to go, all the phases up and running?
We're April of 2026. So
we got about a year to go.
We've got a little bit of time left. The hybrid operating room is fairly complex element of this, which will take some time, and we've just really started the kind of meat of that right now in terms of construction planning and getting that underway. Lots of planning that has been involved with that. When you're coordinating between the OR and cardiology and vascular, there's many multiple specialties involved, and so that's been a very complex project.
So right now we're doing them in the interventional lab,
mm-hmm.
But once we get that dedicated space, we'll be able to have more ability to move around, et cetera. I mean, we're getting them done. Just it's in the interventional.
Yeah,
lab.
we're still doing them today in our current sort of hybrid OR. Not quite the specifications that we would want, so we'll have much more advanced capabilities in this space, and that'll actually be located inside of the OR,
right?
Which just from a flow standpoint in terms of the teams and equipment and all those sorts of things you need will be much more efficient. And, so very excited about that element. But
what else is going on in cardiology?
Well, I like any specialty, recruitment's always a challenge, right? And so, with these procedural-based capabilities, a lot of physicians want to go into those areas. So there's only so many physicians, just like staff, that you can kind of that are out there to get. But we've done a really good job of that, of recruiting and retaining both team members and physicians. So that's probably will always be a number one focus. Yeah. I think the other element is just growing, and I'm speaking more to us, but just sort of how do we coordinate within Unity Point Health, quite honestly, and work with other physicians and other Unity Point Health markets to make sure that we're providing services as close to home as possible, doing that in a well-coordinated manner, extending outreach to communities. That's a very important element as well, certainly. So, that's a big focus, at least for us right now, is to really, continue to grow as a sort of center of advanced care, but then connecting to other areas within our geography to make sure that patients can stay home when appropriate. So
it's just as important to patients to stay home in their smaller community as for us to stay in our community. We totally understand that. Yeah, I think a hospital and a medical staff our size, we're never going to be overstaffed, right?
Right.
We're always going to have the staff to get the job done and do it well,
sure.
But we're never going to have extra staff because we're just at that size.
Mm-hmm.
And so recruiting, retention, particularly retention.
Yeah.
I know at the hospital level, we work very hard at that. And,
well, and the team, I will say, that's always, that's the one reason if I was asked, what do you enjoy most? It's, always going to be the team and the people you work with, because they do some amazing things, day in, day out, and then go home and clock in the next day and do the same thing, not asking for, thanks or whatnot. They should, but, they just it's just what they do. They're just wired that way.
It's a dedicated bunch of individuals.
Yeah.
Take a lot of pride in what they do. And that's probably the thing I enjoy the most, just my job or life. I just enjoy being around people that take a lot of pride in their work.
Right.
That really have some ownership. And that's just, those are easy people to work with,
Mm-hmm.
They make you better.
Right.
Justin, thank you so much for joining me today to discuss St. Luke's Heart and Vascular Expansion Project. Once again, this was Justin McDonald, Director of St. Luke's Heart and Vascular Services. To learn more about the project and about heart care services at St. Luke's Hospital, visit unitypoint.org/CR-heart. Thank you for listening to LiveWell Talk On. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your family, friends, neighbors, strangers about our podcast. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, or wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, be well.